Welcome to the Coachers Podcast. Coaches, athletes, parents, and fans, this is your vault for inspiration.
How's it going? This is Keanu Yamamoto with the Coachers Podcast, sitting here with Coach Corben Hyatt, head football coach of Summit High School, located in Bend, Oregon. Coach, thanks for jumping on. Please tell us about your family, journey, background, progression, all that good stuff.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Background, it's kind of an interesting deal. I've been at Summit 10 years as a head coach, 14. I've been here the last 14 years. I was an assistant before taking over the head coach. Went to McMinnville High School, so kind of knocked around Linfield campus quite a bit, but never had to get out of town. Wasn't a cat. Then after college, went back and actually coached at McMinnville High School for a couple years and got to work under Donnie Retchman, Gary Thorson, who, Gary's, I love Gary. I was Gary's assistant offensive line coach when I was 23 years old. And then had the pleasure of getting to work with Ad Retchman, and I had left Linfield and was on Donnie's staff. So pretty formative years, kind of getting going, was getting to work with a legend. So kind of cool. I've coached basketball, football. Now, obviously, I'm not coaching those other things. I'm strictly football. My first, and this is kind of, I was thinking about this before I knew you were going to kind of ask this. My first coaching job ever, kind of a funny story, and I get reminded about it all the time from parents who are now probably in their 70s, is I was hired during high school. Our district went on strike my junior year in high school, and they were on strike for almost 3 weeks. So my first coaching gig was I was 7th grade girls basketball coach as a junior in high school. I took over the team for 3 weeks while the district was on strike. The teachers were on strike. So I can say that I got started fairly young.
Yeah, no doubt. What was the why behind wanting to get into coaching? I didn't realize how much connection we had. I didn't realize you were kind of born and raised in Mac or went to Mac High School. You had a lot of connections with people that I know at Linfield, and you worked for Mac Farrig, who's the equipment manager at Linfield for, I think it was 18 years that you mentioned.
Yeah.
But what was the why behind wanting to get into coaching?
It was interesting. I've been surrounded just with amazing mentors in early on kind of deal. My best friend in high school, one of my best friends, Danny Langsdorf. Danny, obviously a long time now college coach, coached in the NFL and stuff like that. But Danny's dad was a coach. I had the opportunity to be around the first few years, obviously but H.D. Waddell, who was an amazing wrestling coach, football coach, and just an amazing person. I had the opportunity in high school to get to know Dewey Sullivan. Dewey's a legend in the state of Oregon and coaching and stuff like that. The interesting thing with all those guys was just incredible people. I mean, yes, great football minds, good, but character-wise and stuff like that, and what they brought to coaching in relationships and setting standards and stuff like that was always something that was super intriguing to me. And so, I love the sport. I love to compete and I love all that stuff. But the biggest thing is like, I love having an influence on young men and being able to develop character and stuff like that. And so I think that's the biggest thing why I got into coaching was how could I be an influence in young men's lives and stuff like that, and try to give them something that I felt like was so influential in my life kind of deal. And so it's an honor to coach, I think. And I love one of the things that I very take pride in is, I've got kids that are in their 30s and 40s that I've coached that still call me coach. And that means I've done something right, that they still reference me as that, and they want to be around and stuff like that. And so that's probably the why I got into coaching, was to be able to make an impact on students and athletes and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good answer, Coach. I'm just going to kind of give you my perspective and my way of thinking when I first initially went into coaching. Like you said, I wanted to make an impact, but I do think there was an ego part of me that, I wanted to get in college coaching because I wanted to ascend the ladder. I wanted to be a successful college coach. I wanted to have financial security. I wanted to make, good money. But can you kind of talk about that, kind of how when you were navigating what you wanted to do in life, because you obviously mentioned a lot of connections to the college game, but why did you feel like high school was the right approach for you?
You know what? I never even really considered like the coaching career path. It
Yeah.
kind of fell on me a little bit. It's kind of an interesting deal. When I was young, I was kind of like, oh, I like being around the game and the sport and stuff like that. And then I did that for a few years, and then I actually transitioned to adulthood a little bit and how to, I got a real job. The interesting thing is I'm not a teacher, and I run an academic nonprofit now. So I'm around education and working in buildings and stuff like that. That path was never, do I want to be a college coach? Do I want to do that kind of thing? I actually worked for 18 years for McFerrin, who, yeah, is the equipment guy at Linfield. Did that, was a project manager, got to kind of help build the business and stuff like that. Then we moved to Bend. It was kind of an interesting deal. Was I went to a Summit Mountain View football game when we first moved to town, and um, it was Summit was kind of in their lean years at that time, and they were down by 50 at halftime. And I was like, holy smokes, what is going on? And before we had moved over here, my wife and I had started a nonprofit in Portland called Urban Sports Academy. And what we were doing was providing free sports camps for underprivileged kids in the Portland area. And we would do it around the city and stuff like that. And how we did it was we utilized athletes, college athletes that would help coach the camps and stuff. So I had relationships with Linfield, University of Oregon, Lewis and Clark. They would provide these athletes. So when we moved over here, and I went to the game and they were getting crushed, and I was like, holy smokes. I looked at the program, and I realized that I had actually gone to high school with the head coach at Summit. He was a couple of years younger than me, and I hadn't seen him since I had graduated high school. So at the end of the season, I reached out to Joe and said, look, I do these camps. Let me help you run a youth camp maybe, and that might kind of help build something for you. The interesting thing was that was 14 years ago. At the end of the conversation we had, he said, hey, I want you to be my offensive line coach. And I kind of chuckled and I said, yeah, I have no interest in being your offensive line coach. Went home, saw my wife, and my wife goes, so how was it meeting up with Joe? And I was like, it was great. Yeah, I go, he offered me the offensive line job. And she goes, well, you're going to take it, aren't you? And I go, no, not at all. I'm not interested in going back into coaching. And she was actually the one that kind of forced my hand to go back 14 years ago. And it's, to be honest, it's what's kept us in Bend. It has made us connected in the community. And it's kind of one of those things when you least expect it is something happens like this. And so, I'm just super grateful that I went and had that beer with him, and we ended up connecting. And now, 14 years later, I'm shaking my head going, how did I become the head coach, and what am I doing now?
No, that's great, Coach. What was the nonprofit that you and your wife started when you guys were in Portland? What was that
It
called?
was called Urban Sports Academy.
Urban Sports Academy?
Yeah. So we did that probably for 4 or 5 years. It was grassroots. It was basically, we formed a board with our buddies and friends, and we did it out of our living room. We didn't take any money. We would raise as much money as we could to be able to afford t-shirts and stuff like this. We had some connections with people at Nike that gave us some training stuff, and we would just go in and we would do these camps for 2 or 3 days, 3-4 hours, basically kind of put it out to the communities. And we look back on it, and it was like so rewarding
No
to
doubt.
see these kids, get to have something that, something positive. And it was cool to be able to, do this with guys that would do camps. The funny story is like the Lemon brothers. So, one's the head coach at Tualatin now, Bubba was one of our camp counselors. But, I'd have U of O guys that would come and do camp, and now they're 35 and they're married with kids and stuff like that. They would just eat this stuff up because they were getting to, be a mentor and an influence on kids. How much football were these kids getting for 2-3 days and running around for 3 or 4? But it was those relationships again that I talked about is what's so important about coaching.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of crossover between coaching and you and your wife starting this nonprofit as far as kind of the passion and the why. But if you could just, dive a little bit deeper onto how it got started and then I guess why it started.
Yeah,
And then we'll get into some coaching stuff here in a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The why was I was a kid, my parents, I was probably a lower middle class kid. My parents didn't have a lot of money for me kind of deal. And so I had some opportunities to attend some camps and there was some scholarship money that was helped to do that kind of thing. And so that was kind of the why, was because how much that was important to me was be able to go to camps when I was in middle school, elementary school. I remember it was my first camp I ever went to, Jack Ramsey basketball camp at Willamette High School. And I didn't know the story until later. Was like my mom wrote Coach Ramsey a letter back in the day and said, "Hey, I'd love my son to be able to attend, but we can't afford to do this." And I was scholarship to go to it. And I got to live in the dorms and eat in the cafeteria, crappy food, and get to go to camp with kids and stuff like that. And so when I got out of coaching at McMinnville, it was something that was always still passionate about me, but my path was different. I was working, traveling the United States, running projects and stuff like that. But I always I love being around sports and athletes and stuff like that. And so my wife is a sociology major and was working for an educational nonprofit at the time. So she had a background in nonprofit work, and she was like, let's think about starting something like this. And so it was totally grassroots. It was, an opportunity to give kids something to do during the summer when they've got a lot of free time on their hands where they can get themselves into trouble. When we would do it in Northeast Portland, we would do it out at Gresham. And how we did it was we just drove around and found parks that kind of felt like it fit our demographics. And then we just grassrooted the thing and went and kind of pounded the asphalt to get kids. And we would have some camps, we would have, 20, 30 kids. And then we would have other camps that would have 100 kids. And, it was just one of those things that we love doing.
That's cool, Coach. You mentioned, you're currently running a nonprofit. You're not in the building at school. Can you kind of talk about staff alignment, not being in the building, but still getting everyone on the same page, and obviously a lot of success recently? Can you kind of talk about that process?
Unusual. I have nobody in the building.
Oh, really?
I have no teachers in the building whatsoever. And it's something that I think is a trend. We've talked about this in our district. It's a hard place to afford to live. And so our talent pool for coaches is limited. And then teachers that can move in to afford to live here and stuff like that is hard. And so I've, running an academic nonprofit. I'm not affiliated, or nonprofit's not affiliated to the district, but I have access to all the buildings and schools and stuff like that. So the Summit High School is getting the best of both worlds, where I'm in the building a lot. I've decided, something that I think is super important is where Summit has, I believe, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, I think they have 2 coaches in the 18 sports at Summit that are in the building. Our head girls basketball coach is in the building. He's brand new this year. Dave Turnbull has run our track program for the last 25 years, and he's in the building. But then none of the other head coaches are in the building. at all. One thing that I think makes it unusual for me is I have made it a commitment to build relationships and community with our teaching staff, our administration, and stuff like that. And so I think that's what's important is they see me as part of their staff, even though I don't work with them on a day-to-day basis. I go over during lunch. I'm there in the mornings lifting weights with the boys and stuff like that. The administration, our principal and our vice principals, our athletic director just sees me as one of them kind of deal. And I think if you're going to do that, you have to be that way. I'm with my coaching staff. I talked about this morning. We were in there in the weight room at 6:30 in the morning. We had 52 players lifting at 6:30 in the morning. I had 6 coaches in there this morning, and that the teachers see those guys in the building. They see that we're at different sporting events. We go to basketball games, girls and boys basketball games. We go to support our soccer programs in the fall and stuff like that. So people are seeing us enough that that's how we kind of work around the fact that we're in the building. Would I love to have coaches in the building? Absolutely. I mean, I think that's, I grew up with coaches in the building, and that's such a integral part of, building a successful program. And with me not having that, I've had to figure out ways to do it differently. And, it's part of what I deal with. And I think we've done a pretty good job with it.
Thanks, Coach. Tell us a little bit about, your coaching philosophy. What's important to you? What are your values of the program, if you don't mind sharing
Sure.
those?
Yeah, big thing with me is, like I said, I'm a relationship guy. And so first and foremost, when I'm with coaches, when I'm bringing in new coaches and stuff like that, is they've got to be able to build relationships with players kind of deal. And then once you build a relationship and trust with the player, then you can coach them hard and set your values and your standards and stuff like that. Our team motto that has been from day one is one way, the right way, community, classroom, and field. And why I set that was, it was something that was important to me was that finding that balance between a really good person, somebody that's super strong academically, and then that third piece is going to be an outstanding football player, or athlete or whatever that is. But if you're gonna put, your success ahead of those other two things, it wasn't gonna work for me kind of deal. And so that's kind of my values is, I'm very good at understanding young men and them realizing that we care about them, but we're also gonna coach them super hard kind of deal and hold them to what we believe in kind of deal. And I think kids have a lot of different opportunities to go do stuff now. There's so many different things. It used to be when I was growing up, you did football, basketball, and baseball. And it was like, those were the things and that you just didn't deviate. There's so many darn options for kids to go do things. And, now you can work and make $20 an hour and you're making real money and stuff like that. And football's hard. Let's be honest. I mean, you have to sacrifice, you get beat up, you get injured, all those different things. And so why does a kid want to come? They just don't choose. And maybe it's different at Summit, but kids could go do a lot of different other things. And what we hold them to is that high standard. And you can't do that until you have a relationship with the kid and that they understand that you value them, you care for them. They want to know the whys and they might push back, but that's something that I feel is important, and it drives kids to our program. When I took over our program, I think we had 84 kids in our program. We run about 120 now kind of deal. And yes, it's success on the field, but that success is driven by, we have, our kids are really good. Are they perfect out in the community? Absolutely not. They're high school kids. They're going to screw up and make bad decisions and stuff like that, but they're going to own up to it. They're going to understand there's consequences to their actions. Academically, we've led the state with the highest team GPA 11 years in a row. Academics is going to take our kids so much farther, and I take pride in that, and our community takes pride in it. Our teaching staff and administration, they love that we set this high standard of character and academics, and they then get me into our program.
That's great, Coach. What would you say is one of the greater challenges within coaching?
I think the turnover, I mean, it's a hard job. You
Yeah.
sacrifice. I mean, it used to be, I see it with other programs and stuff like this but our success has been bred on the fact that I've had a core group of coaches that that have stayed with me, and we've been able to build that culture, and they know how I want it done and stuff like that. But you see it around the state. I mean, it is hard to coach. You don't make any money. But it was the funniest thing. When I got hired as the head coach, people reached out to me and goes, "What are you going to do about your nonprofit? You're giving that up?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? You make no money." I mean, there's like, we probably lose money doing this. Everybody thinks that we're all Dan Lannings and we're making $11 million. It's like, come on. No. My first year, I was going from an assistant to a head coach. I think I made $11. I went to my AD and I'm like, what am I doing? Like all the headaches and all that kind of stuff. But now it's a year-round job. We played for a state championship this year. Last weekend of November, we take December off, but you're still putting on banquet. You're still turning in gear. You're getting a reconditioning out and stuff like that. January, we're on semesters. So then we kind of give the kids off this January to get, focus on their academics and stuff. But like on Monday, we started weights and we're in the weight room at 6:30 in the morning and it's year round. And so, the issue is now is there's so much turnover in coaching and stuff like this, and guys start to realize, dude, for us to be successful, I've got to, stay committed and doing stuff like this. And, it's amazing to me to think that this is my 10th year at Summit. How many guys are 2 and 3 years and they're like, dude, I can't do this anymore kind of deal. And so, that's something that we've got to find a balance of, because you're not going to build something. You're not going to have, be able to set your culture and do all that stuff in 2-3 years. I needed 10 years to get to where I wanted our program to be.
Oh, that's a good answer, Coach. For a second, I don't know if you were talking about coaches or players there in the beginning part of that. You mentioned when you first took over, you guys had about 80 kids. Now you guys have about 120. Can you kind of talk about, things that you're doing? Because as you kind of mentioned, right, football is optional. There's so many other things that these kids can be doing, playing sports, working. I mean, you guys are right there. They can go up to the mountain. Can you kind of talk about maybe some things that you think that, are unique to Summit football that you guys do to try and get players to buy in and believe in what you guys got going over there?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I kind of, I think I'm a little bit different. We always talk about, I like being different. It's, I'm not a traditional guy in the building. I like change where, some change. A lot of coaches are strictly to, I do it this way and stuff. I'm always looking to add and change and stuff like this. It frustrates my wife because I'm constantly trying to outdo myself. My ADs tried to calm me down at times because they're like, okay, you're taking on too much. You're trying to do things, because they go, next year, you're going to try to outdo yourself each and every year. You can't get stagnant kind of deal. And so, we've got some unique things. I have 20 coaches on my coaching staff. They're not all paid, but what I do is I try to find high character guys, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to add them to my staff that's going to make us better kind of deal. And so some unusual things I have an academic advisor. He is a former retired police officer, detective from Santa Clara. He played college football at San Francisco State. He's my academic advisor. And so, us leading the state academically just doesn't happen. We've got to have a plan in place. So we track their grades weekly. He and I pull grades. We talk with teachers, find out what we need to do to make sure students are getting stuff done, turned in. What do they need help with? We have our players, our peer tutors. We actually have a study hall within the school day. We have an advisory period on Tuesdays and Thursdays. that if our players have below a B in any class, it doesn't matter if it's in shop or whatever, they're required to be in study hall. And so they're in doing that kind of stuff. I've added another former, or not a former, he's a former parent, but he's a sergeant with the Bend Police Department. He's in charge of all the SROs in our district. He came to me a year and a half ago and was like, hey, my son is out. We're empty nesters. My wife's a teacher in the district. He goes, I love what the program stands for. And so he goes, I want to be a part of it. And I said, let's go sit down, let's have coffee, and let's talk about, what you could add to our program, because I know what type of person you are, what kind of character. And I think having a relationship where our players see police as different than just being these guys that, are there to make arrests and write you tickets and do all that kind of stuff. So I brought Officer Kinsella on. He's my culture and accountability coach. So he's at practice, and he's, he and I will talk about what's going on in the program with like parents, families, stuff like that. If I've got issues, he'll go talk to those guys. Unfortunately, we had like multiple players last year with parents with cancer. So he was always checking in with those. I do that stuff, but when you have 120 people in your program and you're running a program, and I'm trying to go a million different ways, I'm trying to find those guys that are unique and special. And so I think that's what kind of makes us, a little bit different in those capacities. One of the things that I realize is, 95% of our kids are, let's be honest. I mean, and if they do get the opportunity to play college football, it's probably D3 football. They're paying to play. It's still a great experience for them, but you're not going to University of Oregon and stuff like that. And so what we've tried to do is I said, if it's good enough for college, why isn't it not good enough for summit football? So everything that we do is based on, okay, if Linfield does it, why can't we do it? So the way we travel, the way we practice, we do all those things. We try to mimic college football program, with academic advisors, with all this kind of different things that we kind of do. Is it a lot of work? Absolutely. But it's something that I'm about creating experiences for our kids. So then what does it do? It drives participation. Kids want to be a part of this. They're like, well, shoot, look at all these different things. We're traveling to Boise this year. Again, we did that 2 years ago, and we faced off with Highland over there 2 years ago for a game. This year, we're going over and playing Bishop Kelly. Guess what? We travel just like colleges do. We roll over in charter buses. We're in team hotels. My wife's my director of football operations, so everything's locked and loaded. We go and we tour Boise State, and we do all those things. And so all of a sudden, now these kids that are fringe kids, they're kids that are like, football's hard and difficult. Well, they're like, well, shoot, I want to be a part of that. Like, give me some of that deal, because it's like, I want to be able to have a college football experience, and I'm still in high school and stuff like that. And that accountability thing is like, I'm going to provide this to you guys to have these experiences. Now, here's what I need from you. I need you to buy in. I need you to work your tail off. I need you to be in the weight room at 6:30 in the morning and stuff like that. And they're there, and it's cool to see.
Yeah, Coach. That's great. I mean, I love how you guys approach that, and very similar to, I just had a conversation with Coach Matheson at Camas, and he's the same way. How can we elevate it? How can we take it to the next level? And then bringing on an academic advisor and the other police officer who is your accountability coach and culture coach. That's awesome, and I like that you guys are going out and playing out of state, because I mean that's fun to take a team. So are you guys going to the Boise team camp? Was that what you're referencing?
No, so Coach Kreiner at Rocky Mountain, he just stepped down.
Yeah, great dude.
I guess
great
it was
dude,
3 years. What's that?
Said great dude, by the way.
Amazing. Have you interviewed him?
Yeah, I did. I got on with him last winter, probably November, October-ish.
Yeah.
Whenever the season was done, I got on with him.
Yeah, I got to know him 3 years ago. So they started this thing, and it's super cool. It's called the Northwest Showdown. And so what their concept was, take the top 4 programs in Idaho and face off against the top teams in the Northwest. And so The initial year that they started it was 2023. And he reached out to me, and it was us and Wesleyan that got invited from Oregon. And we went over and we faced Highland, who had won the state title the year before in 6A. And we played on a Saturday afternoon, Labor Day weekend over there, and we met at Rocky Mountain High School. And then last year we were invited back, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this every year kind of deal. But this year, he's invited us back. We're playing Bishop Kelly over there. And so it'll be week 1. It's the Friday before Labor Day weekend. So we actually, and I talked to them. We have such a difficult time with getting 3 games. Our JV team gets kind of decimated because of the fact there's only 3 teams over here, or 3 high schools that have 3 teams. And so finding JV games is difficult. And so we're actually going to travel our JV team also over to play. And so we're going over 2 nights this year. We'll go over on Thursday. JVs will play Thursday night. Varsity will play on Friday. We'll dress all of our JV kids for the game. So we'll probably dress 80 plus for the game. But it'll be a cool experience. And again, it's that, here's how we do it. We're going to travel. We're going to wear the same thing. So there's a sense of pride. You'll be in the team hotel. This is how your expectations and stuff. My big thing is like, let's challenge ourselves. I want to play playoff football from the beginning. And so going and finding these teams that are the best teams to go face is kind of, sometimes my coaches hate me because they're like, dude, are you kidding me who we're facing? But I'm like, you know what? We're going to have to play, these teams in the playoffs. Let's not get after it early.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, BK just won the 5A state championship out there this past year.
Yeah.
Where are you guys staying at?
Go.
Where are you guys staying at? Where are you guys staying at?
Scott worked some hotel deals. We're Marriott people, so my wife and I, we travel a lot. And so I'm sure she'll get us locked into some Marriott out there, Fairfield Inn or one of those. And we did this 2 years ago, and literally she rolls out in an advanced car. She sets up in the lobby. We've got banners. These kids get off and they think they're NFL guys. And it's one of those things where she hands out the itinerary to them, and they know where they need to be, when they need to be, and how they need to be. It's one of those things that the families roll in. We take over the whole team hotel kind of deal. It's a super cool experience. And so, it's one of those things that it's a unique thing. Thank goodness we have been successful the last few years, and we've been invited back to go do those kind of things.
No doubt. If you guys are staying at the Marriott out there, if I'm not mistaken, there's a water park that's pretty close by if you guys are staying at the Marriott.
Yeah.
It might be cool to go check out the water park. I don't know how much it is to get in there. We were there for 2 years. 2 years. Okay. Never tried out the water park, but I mean, loved it out there. Beautiful area, lots of stuff to do. So that should be fun for the guys.
No, it'll be fun. We're excited. And you know what, by playing these tough early games and going over there, there's a sense of urgency for us to train during the summer, the off season. Yeah. It's like, if you're going to line up and you're going to just boat race some teams and stuff like this, you've got to motivate your guys kind of deal. I'm like, dude, we're rolling in, we're playing teams, and we've got to get after this. We've got to be tight with our practice plans. We've got to be, on top of things and stuff like that. So there's this sense of urgency starting in February. It's like, dude, we're in the playoffs to begin. So it's not like we get to just build on this. Like, now you can do that when you have a veteran team.
Yeah, no, that's good, Coach. That's good. Can you kind of run us through just, in season, what your practice structure looks like? And if there's a drill or team period that you guys do that would be beneficial for other teams, or you wish you did early in your career, if you could share that, if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, it's interesting with me getting started young and getting to work with Ad Rutschman in the Linfield way kind of thing. Is Coach Rutschman's a 3-hour practice kind of guy, attention to details and stuff like that. As kids have gotten, now everything is Snapchat and videos and screens and all this stuff. Their attention span is is limited kind of deal. So one of the things I think that makes us unique is, and it forces my coaches to really be on top of how they do things and stuff like this, is we only practice 2 hours. We are 2 hours on the dot. It is 120 minutes and we are in and out kind of deal. And why I do that is, and it was something when I played in college, our coach was like that. And so it was an incentive for our kids, us as players, was to practice the right way. And if we did it the right way, we would be out. If we weren't, you would restart and stuff like that. So we go 2 hours, we cut the water breaks out. I'm like, you guys are adults kind of deal. Here's the deal is, if you're not in right now, you go and get your water kind of deal. You used to, as you wrote practice plans, you'd have to put in 5-minute water break and you had to do this kind of stuff. I was like, you know what? The water's over there. You're an adult. Go get your own water kind of deal. But don't do it when you're the starting right tackle and we're in team period and we got our ones up. You don't go get water. We got to teach them those things. But then what it really forced my coaches to do was really be cognizant of what their practice plan was in their attention to detail. Because I think there's too much standing around at practice kind of deal. You got coaches that are talking about what they want to do and stuff like that. And so okay, Mondays are teaching and practice plans that are set. Everybody kind of does the same thing. You're going to make your corrections. You're going to do your install on Mondays, stuff like that. One thing that coaches, and I like Coach Geske from Springfield came over a few years ago and watched our practice. I've had other coaches in our league come to our playoff practices. People are blown away when they hear about our playoff practices. We go from 2 hours to an hour and a half. We go 90 minutes. And we are in and out in 90 minutes. And it might be the toughest practices we have all season. We line up and we get after it. Now, the interesting thing with that is how we do this is our ones and twos, they are the only ones that get reps. And then everybody else is a scout team guy. So we actually, on Sundays when we do our team meetings and stuff like this, is we'll go our ones and twos offensive meeting. We'll go 30 minutes. The guys that are the scout guys, and we actually specifically set our roster to, I grabbed some freshmen that are 6 or 8 guys that we know we're going to be thin at, like D-line and maybe DBs. And I go pick those kids out of the freshman deal. Different types of bodies, can they handle this kind of stuff? And then on Sundays, I meet with our JV coaches and our freshman coaches, and we set the scout looks for the week. And we have 2 scout looks. And if we're playing like Wilsonville and Coach Gunther, it's the blue and silver groups. And those dudes own that crap. I mean, they are like, that is, and so they go watch film in another classroom and they're like, hey, you are number 84 and you need to play like him. And that is your role and you're going to own that stuff. And so we actually match bodies to sizes and stuff like that. And then we get after it. We run. So like a typical period would be a 20-minute team period after our indies and stuff like that. And we'll run 40 to 45 plays in that 20 minutes in our team period. And it is rapid fire. And so basically, if our starting D is in right now, we've got, on both hashes, we've got our 2 scout looks. One scout look showing what they're running and stuff like that, while the other one's in lined up. As soon as the whistle's blown, the other team's in, and our D is like sprinting back up to get lined up. And it's a sense of urgency kind of deal. They get 5 reps, they're out, then the 2s are in, and it's just rapid pace. It's kind of a little bit like Chip Kelly, stuff like this. Now, it is choreographed. Run the tempos and I'm doing all that stuff. We've actually now taken that playoff format and we've moved that to Tuesdays. Yeah. And so what we do is, we call it Tough Tuesday, is we run that same format on Tuesday, where then at the back end of it, our 3s and 4s, which are usually our JV guys, they go an extra 45 minutes on their own and they get their own practice at the back end. The incentive piece is for our varsity guys, our 1s and 2s, is if you practice the way that we want you to practice, you're out in 90 minutes. So on Tuesdays, if they're going at it, getting after it, and we're having a great practice, 90 minutes, you're out the door and you're headed home kind of deal. And so, I try to give our guys that kind of stuff. The other thing that's unique to us, I wear full pads and go to the ground 7 times in the whole season. You know what? We've got to be healthy at the end of the year. And I think that's where our success has been in the playoffs, is making those changes to the way that we practice during the playoffs, but we're healthy at the end. And the thing is what us going shells, and it's so funny, is we'll go full pads, we'll go to the ground 7 times, and that's including during doubles. Wow. 7 times. We'll go shells, but I make them wear their girdles all season long. Guess what? Yeah. What are they? The only thing they're missing are those damn little knee pads that nobody wants. They all want to pull them up anyhow, but they think I'm giving them something, right? Yeah. They all think I'm giving them something that they don't have to put their pants on, kind of deal. We've got to teach them the way that we want to practice. And so that's something that I work with our coaches, is what I need to see out of that session. So we teach them what that looks like, what the pace looks like, and all that kind of stuff. So we teach them what they need to know during those sessions, how we could practice. Now, if we aren't practicing the way, I threaten to put those damn knee pads on and make them pull on practice pants. And all of a sudden, guess what? We get what we need out of them. So that's something unique for us. A lot of the teams are like, you got to line up and you got to do all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, you got to incentivize these kids, kind of deal. You know what? If we're coaching the right way and getting out what we need in practice, you got to think differently now. And we've been healthy at the end of the year.
I think that's very, very true what you're saying. You talk about durability being the best ability, but we'll dive into that a little bit more. But I think, and this hasn't come up in other conversations, so you're the first one that's really addressed, how do you go about communicating what tempo should look like at practice? That's a very big deal. When I was at Boise State, when I was at Oregon State, was how do we tag off? You know what I mean? Because to me, tackling it's angles and it's intent and it's body positioning, right? And you can practice all those things without any contact. So that was the one thing that at Boise, at Oregon State, defensive coordinator got in front of the whole team, right? What does tackling look like? What is my body position? What is my angle? And then you go about, what does tag tempo look like? How are we going to approach the hip? How are we going to tag off on the hip? If the ball is to us, we're going to punch at the ball. If the ball is away from us, we're not going to punch and rake. We're going to go with a nice tag. Okay, then it's how do we define thud tempo? And what I loved that Oregon State, Coach Bray did a great job. Okay, thud. If you're a linebacker in the box, if the play hasn't passed linebacker level and you're in a positive frame, everything is thud tempo. Once you feel yourself in a negative angle, okay, now we're working our tag off, because in the game, that's going to be a gator roll tackle. That's going to be a side profile tackle. So I like how you guys do that. And I do think probably other coaches do that. It's the first time that's really come up in conversation. So I like how you guys do that. How did you land on 7? What is it about the number 7 where, okay, we're only going to tackle 7 times throughout the year?
I looked at, okay, how many times are we need to tackle during doubles, kind of deal. Then you can't kill it during the year, kind of deal. So what it was 4 times during doubles. Okay. And then it was the first 3 weeks of the season. So we would add it one day.
First 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
We would do it 1 day a week. And that was our 7 kind of deal. Now, and this was my thing with what ends up happening, and this is where the coaching piece and teaching what you want it to look like and stuff like this. You put on pads, okay, full pads, you go thud, you go to the ground and stuff like that. Guys' techniques get sloppy. It's super easy, kind of, right? You go down to the ground, linemen get sloppy with their techniques. Guys are getting rolled up. Everybody just forgets their technique because you're running around just smashing into people, kind of deal. Going in. So then all of a sudden, bad technique, guys on the ground, guys getting rolled up, stuff like this. All of a sudden, now you have more opportunities to get injured, kind of deal. Yeah. And so I'm going, okay, how do we do this where we're coaching what we need? And you do that in your positional individual times is like, how are we going to tackle? How are we going to, what does thud look like? You do that in breakdown, you do that at the D line. D line's going to look different than in linebackers. And then in the back end with those, how do those look and stuff like that? So that 7 kind of deal was more, it was like, okay, I'm not saying that we need to tackle and you need to get those bruises and stuff like that. But it was also like, okay, we've got to limit our guys. I was an offensive lineman, and all of a sudden, you get piles and guys get rolled up on the back of their legs, and it's just some unique thing. And all of a sudden, you've got a guy down with an ankle, or he's blowing an ACL or something like this. And so it was like, okay, how do we do this? And then the other thing is like, if we're not doing our practices right, then we go back to that. We need to learn to tackle. We need to do this kind of thing. And so, the 7 it was just one of those things where I looked at our practices and went, okay, we can go live for 4 during doubles. And, we're not going to go, out of it kind of deal, but we're going to go, and it is hard, and it's, everybody's getting that kind of thing. We'll do that. Then we'll do it once a week for the first 3 weeks. But then after that, it's like, yeah, we don't need that.
Yeah. No, I know I referenced Coach Matheson earlier, but that was his thing too. Is like, and it was a cool analogy or parallel that he drew on was, hunting dogs. Like, you let them out, you reel them back in, you let them out, reel them back in, because when the hunt comes, you want them to be excited, for the hunt. And I do think like that's a big deal with football. It's okay when like Boise State, Oregon State, the first day of live was freaking goal line install day, and that was really the first day of live, and players used to get fucking jacked for that. So I do think there's a good balance of, are we doing it the right way? And like you're saying, we're not overexerting ourselves, and we're not going to go out there and put ourselves in
well, and think about
situations.
this, like what Coach Matheson's saying, similar is like, if your guys are fresh on Friday nights, like, and they haven't done that, they haven't been hitting, they haven't been, there's this pent up kind of deal. Like, there's like, shoot, I'm flying around. I'm giving that. If you're banged up all week long and then you're trying to play on Friday night and you've done now 3 days of hitting kind of deal, and now you're almost kind of surviving that Friday to going, oh my God, I've got this shoulder deal and stuff like this where, if you're doing things right, and I'm not saying we don't practice. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. We're intense, and it's, we're flying around and we're doing that kind of stuff. But, those nagging injuries, because they build up on you. The first thing I say to our guys is, we practice in the morning, the first double day, and then we come back and we meet in the afternoons and we go over corrections and we go over installs for the evening session and stuff like that. And I'll say to the guys is, you've got to learn what the difference is between being injured and being hurt. There's a difference. I go, how you feel right now is the best you're going to feel until hopefully in January, because we're playing deep into November. Like, it's not for everybody. If football was for everybody, we have 700 boys at Summit, and 120 play football. They're the toughest 120 guys that can play football but guess what? You're going to be beat up. It's part of it. You've got to learn that you're not going to be 100% all the time. But we do. We fly around, we hit and stuff like that. Now I'm sure everybody's going to be listening to this going, God, Summit is soft. It says everything that we know about Summit being the West Side kind of deal.
I think that just to set the record straight, there's a means of training hard and then training smart, and then training hard and smart together, I think, is the most optimal way. And the
100%.
best way is, as long as your guys are healthy at the end of the season and they're as fresh as they can be, I think that gives you the biggest competitive advantage.
Well, if you're prepared, you know what? You want to go into that championship bracket with a chance to win. And if you're going in missing your quarterback and your left tackle and stuff like that, let's be honest, you're playing in the first round, you're probably not getting out of the first round. I'm planning on playing 4 weeks. And how am I going to do that is my guys are going to be healthy and they're going to be fresh and we're going to be ready to roll.
Yeah. Well, that's good, Coach. What is one thing that you wish more people understood about the sport of football?
Just all the things that go along with it. I mean, it's such a, I listened to a couple of your podcasts, and it's interesting listening to the different coaches and stuff like that. Football is such a unique sport where everybody can play, kind of deal. And so, one of the things we talk about in our program is find your role. Okay. Not everybody's going to be a starter. There's 22 starters. If you include special teams, there's more and stuff like that. But there's only 22 guys that can start. There's backups. There's special teams guys. There's scout team guys. We celebrate all those guys. Like, we are only as good as our scout looks. Like, I think that's what makes us unique is our scout looks are college level scout looks. Like, we focus our attention on our scout looks and stuff like that. So we usually, when you talk scout looks, guys are like, oh my God, I'm on the scout team. This sucks. I'm not we've all been there. We were college football players. You're a freshman, you're sacrificed to those guys and stuff like that. We celebrate that. Your role in our program is impactful. Doesn't matter if you're the last guy on the roster or if you're the starting quarterback who's been our starting quarterback for 3 years. It doesn't matter. Everybody's the same kind of deal. So we celebrate those scout team guys. We celebrate special teams is huge for our program. I don't coordinate the offense and defense. I don't micromanage our guys. I'm involved in that. I have my say, but in the long run, I run our special teams, and I love running our special teams because guess what? When the head coach is in charge of special teams, it must be freaking important, right? All of a sudden, it's like he's spending his time on this and stuff like that. I get juice. Like, I'm not a big trick play guy, but boy, let me be a special teams guy. I'm coming up with every 2-point play, and I've got trick plays and stuff like that. And guess what? Those special teams kids are like, dude, how do I get on special teams? This is freaking great. Like, I love this kind of thing. So that's, I think, is that piece about football is so different than other sports is everybody can come out and have a valuable piece in football that actually matters, kind of deal. And where, other sports, it's not necessarily that way. And then again, it's such a sport that you have to sacrifice. I mean, you are getting beat up. It's funny is I have a lot of kids that do lacrosse and they're like, Coach, we just scrimmage. Like, can't we scrimmage more? And I'm like, dude, if you scrimmaged every day, you would never make it to Friday, kind of deal. We got to do the same drills over and over and over. Basketball, they can go scrimmage. Football sucks. Let's be honest. August, it's 120 degrees and you're wearing all that gear and you're getting beat up and stuff like this. And you're going, what am I doing? And it just builds character. There's life kind of is difficult. And it kind of, football kind of teaches you to go learn adversity and sacrifice and all those different things. And so, I have to have my knee replaced in 3 weeks. And it is a direct reflection of playing football. I'll never say this at a parent meeting. You're going to be beat up and injured. Like, it is what it is, kind of deal. I won't tell mom that, it's like, hey, your kid is going to love football and it's the greatest thing in the world. You're going to sacrifice. Yeah, exactly. You got a shoulder. I got a knee that needs to be replaced, a shoulder that needs to be replaced. But guess what? Would I change any of it? Not a chance in the world.
Yeah. One of the questions that I wrote down on the side over here was, what's a situation in football that gets overlooked, but how much you've talked about scout team, especially at the high school level. Like, I do believe that gets overlooked. And sometimes it's like a human resource problem. Like, there might not be enough kids on the team to imitate that and give a good look, or there might be a kid or, number of kids. But like you're saying, like, you go out and you hand select the guys to try and match the body types, which I think is a huge deal. And I like that you guys put an emphasis on that and I was writing this the other day. It's like one of the things that we're trying to do as coaches, right? When we're watching film, when we're teaching guys, we're trying to imitate as much as possible. And then we're trying to automate our guys as much as possible. So it becomes their processes, their decision-making, their thinking, their technique just becomes automatic. So I liked how much you dove into, prioritizing scout team, right? If you could sit down with any coach, it could be Saban, it could be, I don't know who your coaching guru or your coaching mentor is, but
Yeah.
if you could sit down with that coach, what's the one question you want answered from that?
Yeah. I I love listening to coaches. That's the thing that is interesting to me was I didn't realize until I became a head coach how much I enjoy talking with coaches, listening to coaches, learning about other programs and what they do. Coach Saban to me he is everything to me. And so I listen to him whenever he speaks, it's like I'm listening to God kind of deal. And so the thing I think I want to ask him is he always talks about the process. It's not necessarily about the game, but it's the process. And that's such a big picture thing is like, what is the process kind of deal? Like why did that become such a focus to him would be kind of the question. Now that I think about with what I do, it's a lot of process based kind of thing is like, okay, why do we do this and stuff? But like he was really kind of the first one. It's like, it's not about necessarily the game, but it's about what we do, the process to get to the game kind of thing. And so I could probably sit there. I mean, that would be my dream is just to be like, here's my first question. And then it just leads to like, I could take it all in with him. I mean, I'm sitting here, I've got a book right here. That's a Nick Saban book. I'm like, if I'm on Twitter or X, if you call it now, like if
Yeah.
there's something that's rolling back from when he's talking to businesses and stuff like that, that dude there's a reason why he won 7 national. Love him or hate him, that dude knows things. He needs to be the commissioner of college football. He is everything.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what college football looks like in the next
Such a
3 to 5 years.
disaster. Yeah.
All right, Anela, my daughter got a question for the guest of the day.
Yeah,
Right,
love
and her question was, "What is your favorite fruit and vegetable?"
Fruit and vegetable or fruit or vegetable?
Fruit and fruit.
Okay. So pineapple, like I can crush pineapple like
Are you a
there's no
pineapple on pizza guy?
No,
Okay.
just straight pineapple. I like my wife and I are Hawaii people. We go to Hawaii almost every year.
Yeah.
Got
What
engaged
island do
there.
you guys usually go to?
Maui.
Yeah.
We're Maui people. But it is the funniest thing. I will eat so much pineapple in Hawaii that the inside of my mouth is sore because I can't get enough of it. It is everything. You do not put pineapple on pizza. You just, and that is like a awful deal. But yeah, I'll eat pineapple to the end of the day. And then I'm a big asparagus guy because here's the deal is obviously being an O-line guy, I like my steak. Asparagus is a perfect match to a steak kind of deal. So,
Yeah.
you got one and you got the other kind of deal. So I'll go asparagus.
I like it. What does team mean to you, Coach?
What does team mean to me? It's everything. I mean, it honestly, it is this time of year, building the team is the bonds, the relationships, all that kind of stuff is like, I love my coaching staff. I love my players. I could go 0-9 or I could go, 13-0. And if you've got that cohesiveness, that brotherhood, that bond that you've sacrificed, it's everything kind of deal. And that's why I absolutely love what I do is just that unique thing about, team sports and what it leads to and stuff like that. People that do individual sports, I love that they do individual sports, but there's just something unique about the whole team environment that is just so unique. And it's probably why I keep coaching is it's all of it.
Yeah. Let's talking off the field here, because I do believe, some of the greatest times as a football player, right, are where you build the biggest relationships and trusts are, within the weight room, within practices, in conditioning, team dinners, all that stuff. But aside from football, Are there some other actionable steps that you and your staff do to help build, trust and continuity within the team?
Yeah, so actually right now it's funny is I'm in my office right now. And I've got an office that's actually right next to something. So in my conference room right now, and I can see because I have a camera in there, is our seniors, we put committees together. Everybody loves to be a committee, right? You think you've made it if you're on a committee or you've been asked to be on a board and stuff like this. So our seniors formed two committees. One is a team bonding committee and the other one's community service committee. I'm in charge of the community service community. They are in there right now meeting and they are discussing what community service program is for our football program this February. They have to organize it, execute it, and decide what it is. They have to do everything. They come up with a president, a vice president, a director of communications. I just sit in the meetings and I give them something to think about. Like the community service group will do that in February. The team bonding committee will do something with the whole program that they have to execute and do, organize, go elect the people, figure out how much it's going to cost. I give them a little bit of money, budget it, stuff like that. We do that stuff throughout the year to kind of just keep us all engaged. That's the thing is I want my athletes to do other sports. I don't want them to do football year round, but what I do want them to do is be together and build those relationships. And so we do that by these committees and stuff like that. We do that by lifting weights. Lifting weights is going to make you better for track and baseball and, rugby and all these other sports that they do. But I want them to be together. So we come up with these committees and it's fun because they have ownership. I'm sitting there looking right now. There's like 11 of them in there right now and they're talking about things. I'm supposed to be in there and I'm on this with you and stuff like that. But it's that ownership piece of, I told them this morning, championship teams are player led, not coach led. That's the thing is like I know what I want it to envision and look like and how they practice and train and do all that stuff. But if it's led by players, like we're going to be great kind of deal. It's just, it's a unique deal. I can tell if we're going to have a chance to play for a championship team by the uniqueness and the bond and the leadership of the group before we even get out on the field in August.
Yeah. What were some of the things the team bonding committee came up with in years past?
We play dodgeball. We love to compete, so we do dodgeball. We've gone to, there's a trampoline park. We'll do trampoline deals. Our kids love to compete. Our girls soccer program and our football program are pretty in sync. Our girls soccer coach, she goes with me to the U of O coaches clinic every year. And so she goes. And so the two programs are pretty unique. They come up with in the off season, they do a recess games day where the two of them compete against each other. So that's kind of a fun deal where, there are football programs at our girls soccer games, our girls soccer programs at our football games. There's this kind of uniqueness about them. I'm on the sidelines of our girls soccer games. Our girls soccer coach at some games is standing right next to me on Friday nights listening to, she's asked if she can have a set of headphones. I told her if she can handle the language, she can have a set of headphones. So, but those are kind of some of the fun things that we do. We'll float the river together, we'll do that. We'll do meals and stuff like that. It's getting outside of just being football players is kind of that brotherhood and stuff. So it's fun.
Yeah. How do you go about, and coach, if you got to go meet with your guys, just let me know.
Yeah, let me pause real quick and can we do that? And let me tell them what I need from them.
I got the pause option right here.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What were you saying about your time down at Stanford, coach?
So it was interesting. I was down at Stanford last weekend visiting one of my students who is in our academic nonprofit. But when I was down there, when I go travel and I'll be out at Duke in 2 weeks, if I'm going, I'm going to also go meet with the coaching staffs out there if I can. Stuff. So down there, I reached out to those guys, Doyle, who's a director of football operations for Stanford, and he connected me with Jordan Watkins, who's the director or assistant director of recruiting. And their guys were all out on the road, their staffs and stuff. So met with him, kind of, learned more about Stanford football and saw the facilities and stuff like that. But the craziest thing was, Andrew Luck now is their general manager. Being there, they didn't have many coaches. All their coaches were out on the road being in January and stuff like that. And so limited people in the building and stuff like that. So we're there in the basically rotunda of their building, and their football facilities are kind of unique in the fact that, most Division I programs have like football specific buildings and facilities, and everything is separated from the athletic department. Stanford being, having the most Olympic sports, and I think they have 30 some collegiate sports, is all their athletics are in this one building, including football kind of deal. And so you have two floors and stuff like this. And you have in the bottom is like the Stanford Hall of Fame. And then around that is like offices of the different sports and stuff like that. And then there's a big stairwell up to second floor that has the other, like I think boys basketball's right next to the football offices and stuff like that. So we're in this rotunda down on the first floor, and it's my wife and I with Jordan just talking to him, kind of asking questions, and he's telling me about kind of their different things and stuff like this. And all of a sudden, I see the door open from the football offices, and here comes Andrew Luck walking it off. And he's coming down the stairs, and they have a cafe, sports cafe that's kind of up the lobby area. And I kind of figure like he's going to blow by and head right there kind of deal. He's got other stuff to worry about kind of deal. He comes down the stairs and he comes right to me. And he's like, "Hey, Andrew Luck, Coach Hyatt, great to have you here," all this kind of stuff. Starts talking to me about Summit, about Bend. He's got a buddy that lives here. He's been by Summit High School, all this kind of stuff. And spends probably 10, 15 minutes just standing there talking to us and, kind of opening up about everything kind of deal. And I was kind of going like, dude, that dude does not need to know who I am. He's got bigger stuff kind of going on and stuff like this. And then we go and we tour the facilities where we go up and we're in one of the meeting rooms and we're talking their kind of recruiting philosophies and what they're looking for and stuff like this. And we come back out and all of a sudden again, Andrew jumps up out of his office. He's like in the first office as soon as you come in the door. So he's not hidden in the back and stuff like this. He comes out, exit again with us, asks, how things been, is there anything else you want to know? Says, if you ever want to do this again, you're on campus, you reach out to me kind of deal and stuff like this. Turns out the whole thing of where college football is now and his title and stuff like this is it's super unique. He's the general manager and everybody has this unique, how does the general manager fit within the college football and everything? And they were telling me this, he is over the top of everything. And so he doesn't even report to the athletic director. He reports directly to the president. It's him, the president kind of deal. And so he was coaching at Palo Alto High School, which was across the street from Stanford. He was an assistant coach. And when all this went down with Coach Taylor and they had this issue and stuff like this, the president went directly to Andrew and said, "I'm going to create this position and you are going to be the general manager." And the general manager is going to, and he has his hand in everything. He negotiates the NILs. He hires and fires. He does everything where it's this different kind of approach to things. And it was kind of fascinating how, it started in the NFL where you have general managers, you have head coaches and the dynamics of these things. Now it's led to, colleges have this. In high school football, we're usually about 3 to 5 years behind everybody else, but it's the kind of the trend that's going to be kind of deal is, at some point you're going to have, that position on your staff where you're going to have a person that oversees everything kind of deal. And so those are the things that's kind of unique that I kind of am totally fascinated by is like, do I see myself coaching forever? Probably not. But those kind of things, I feel like I'm a guy that likes to build things. And I think as a general manager, as a director of football operations, whatever title you want to be, is like, I think that's a fascinating kind of deal that I could see. Uh, Coaches that have kind of put in their time and their energy, but don't want to get out of a game kind of deal.
Yeah.
You don't, I love having these conversations with you and podcasts and love, the brotherhood of coaching community. I've been trying to figure out what after when I'm done coaching, what that looks like in the future is like, I don't want to just completely remove myself from coaching. Could I see myself being a position coach? I don't know. That's a hard deal to go from being kind of the head guy to being that kind of deal. But I don't think I would ever want to like remove myself from like the coaching aspect or the coaching community of it. I mean, I text with coaches, or talk on the phone with guys. This morning, I was texting with a few head coaches that are in 5A that we have a thread that goes back and forth. And that's what I love about the coaching community is, we all are kind of going through it together. Kind of thing. And we all have, unique situations, but then we also lean on each other when we want that support and stuff like that. And so,
Yeah.
that's an intriguing deal. The general manager, director of football operations was interesting to get to see. Here's a guy that played at such a high level down at Stanford and is the face of that program and everything like that. And now he's taking this big encompassing thing and going, how do I get it back to where it was and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think those two schools who don't like each other. I think those two, from what I know, maybe some others, maybe in the SEC, but for the most part, like Cal and Stanford, right, where you have alumni who care about the program and want to do what's best for the program, and have already had success at the highest level. So that to them, it's just like a means I'm almost giving back. But I do think
100%.
those two schools are very unique in the sense that they have so much. The GMs have a lot of oversight and a lot of say, if not absolute authority over the football program, which I
Right.
think is great for those two schools. But when I hear like GM, to me, I just think of talent acquisition, negotiating the NIL stuff. At least I think that's the common definition within college
No, I agree.
athletics. Yeah.
No, I agree. And it's crazy to me. This whole NIL, like money. I mean, like I was talking to those guys. I had coaches obviously rolling through here the last, 2, 3 weeks and talking to those guys and just how it's all changed where now there's agents and you're dealing with agents and stuff like this. It's
Yeah.
such a weird dynamic right now.
Yeah, not being in it anymore. I think that is probably one of the biggest things that needs to get fixed. Like, what is the guardrails for an agent? Why does the real estate agent only get 3 at most 6% commission if they're representing both sides? Like, there needs to be a cap on that. So when it comes to representation, and there needs to be a framework where people need to get qualified.
Well,
Because like you hear college coaches talk about like, why is the roommate representing him, and how much is the roommate going to get out of this deal? So I mean, there's a lot of things to fix, and
I was at a
that is
clinic
definitely one of them.
last year and I listened to a guy talking recruiting and I'm fascinated by the recruiting and how do I get my kids to the next level? And, because I want my kids to have opportunities to play in college kind of deal. But it also, it helps my program because what kids want to be a part of a program that, gets kids on to the next level and stuff like that. And so I'm fascinated by recruiting. I want to build relationships with the universities and coaches that they can trust me that I'm going to send the right kids to them and stuff like this. But I was listening to this guy at this clinic talk, and he was talking about how high school coaches, because you're the guy that's developed these kids, you should be the one being compensated for their NIL. So you should be negotiating their NILs with colleges and you should be getting. I was like, oh, dude, what are you talking about? That is everything that like high school coaches, like you should
Against,
not
yeah.
be. Oh, it was like and it was interesting, like all the coaches that were sitting around me, and we were a group of friends that we're all like going, what is this guy talking about? Like, and he was from the Southeast, and it was like kind of handout kind of deal. And I'm like going, that is not like what high school coaches should be doing, is like negotiating NIL deals for your players and stuff like that. You should be like promoting your kids and wanting your kid to go to a great institution, that they're going to be developed, that they're going to get their education, that they're going to be a coaching staff that believes in them and stuff like that, not based on how much money they're going to get.
No doubt. That's a big principal agent problem right there.
So wrong.
We'll go a couple more questions, and then I'll
Sure.
let you get back to you guys. You mentioned earlier, right? It took you 10 years to get to where you're at now at Summit. And I think, my personal experience, I wanted to get into college coaching, and I wanted to be here in X amount of years, whatever here was. I think there's a lot of head coaches out there or young assistant coaches where, they do want to ascend pretty quickly. But you mentioned you took 10 years to get to where you're at now. So advice that you could give those guys, advice that you could give me 4 years ago, 5 years ago, what would advice be?
Here's the thing that was interesting when I became the head coach. I had no aspirations of ever being a head coach. I was great being an offensive line guy, with my guys and stuff like this. I was actually asked to kind of apply. Kind of the athletic director at the time had looked at kind of our program, where we were kind of, we had just come out of a state championship in 15. Things were trending up. The interesting thing is, this is our 25th year at Summit, and before me, we had 6 head coaches in 15 years kind of deal. So think about that. There was nothing ever established and built. And so he kind of looked at me and said, I think you could be a guy that can take over the program, but also build it kind of deal. So, the first few years was hard because I had never even wrapped my head around the fact that like needed to learn all the things to be a head coach. There's so many, there's buses, and you've got, all the stuff. I always say, like being a head coach is like 35% X's and O's, and it's 65% of all the other stuff. It's like hiring a staff. It's building all those things. And so I wish I would have had the opportunity to be like, okay, if I want to be a head coach, like almost be mentored by like somebody, so that when I didn't walk in being a head coach, I felt like the first 2, 3 years, and I got my teeth kicked in early. I mean, we were 5-4 the first year. We got shoved to 6A the next 2 year, or a 4-year cycle. The next 2 years, Summit went 2-7. And there was a lot of times I sat there and was like, I'm not the right guy for this kind of deal, and I was like questioning everything I was doing kind of deal. Cause I was like, yeah, dude, I'm like, this is hard. It's like I was trying to figure out what I stood for. I mean, I had a 5-year vision that I wanted, but it was one of those things. And so like, I want to always tell guys like yourself and stuff like this, everybody wants to, you know, get there as fast as you can. It's like, I want to be the head guy kind of deal. In my personal opinion, I think you need to do it all. You need to be a freshman coach, and you need to learn what is freshman football is different than JV football and varsity football and stuff like that. You need to get your hands in everything. It's been interesting the last few years, and it really fuels me. As the first few years, I was like, I'm never giving up being offensive line coach. I love it. So being the head coach in an offensive line, to be an offensive line guy, you have to bury your head in the offensive line, right? You got 5 dudes, and you've got to be in there and stuff like that. And I was missing so much of everything else to coach the offensive line. Like year 3, I was like, dude, I'm 2-7 again. I can't do that. Okay. I've got to, so you know what? I was like, I had a running back coach that left. I was like, shoot, I know the run game, I'll coach the running backs. Like, I'm not giving up coaching a position kind of deal. So I coached the running backs for 4 years. And then this last year, I had my receivers coach left. And I was like, you know what? Here's a 6'5", 300-pound offensive line coach. I go, I'm going to coach the receivers. So I had to drop some weight. I dropped a little bit of weight. I went and I learned. I went and I met with a bunch of receiver coaches and stuff like that. And I coached the wide receivers this past year, and I absolutely loved it. I think as if you want to have aspirations of being a head coach, you got to learn it all kind of deal. And so, I got some young guys on my staff that like have told me, yeah, I want to be a head coach. And I'm like, I love that. Guess what? You're going to do it all. You're going to be the guy that needs to learn to open the gates and turn the lights on. And because it's all those things that you think being the head coach, you get to make all the decisions. Guess what? You're the first guy at practice. You know what? You're the guy that unlocks the weight room, and stuff like that. And if you're the example, then everybody follows. But if you're the guy that rolls in at, we've got morning weights at 6:30 and you're rolling in at 6:28, your coaches are going to follow that example and stuff like that. And so that's what I've told my guys is that want to be head coaches is like, that's great. Let's mentor you to become a head coach so that because God, I didn't know all this stuff. And I was a disaster. I'll be the first one I apologize to my first few years to those guys. They still come back and they still like me, but I'm like going, dude, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. No, I like that, Coach. That's some good advice right there. Last thing, and then we'll conclude it. You mentioned the leadership committees or the team bonding committee and the community service committee. Talk to me just briefly on your guys' captain process, because I do think how certain schools do it, I think it can be unique, and I think it's always fun to hear what other people do.
Yeah. Super unique for us because when I was an assistant, the protocol with our previous head coach was, you had 4 captains. It was voted by the team, and generally it was your best players. In my opinion, not the best player is always the best captain, and a lot of times it's not the case at all. Kind of deal. And so we have a unique deal. We don't have captains. We have a leadership council. So what we did, and I took this from, for whatever you say about Urban Meyer did some good things. And at Ohio State, he developed a leadership council. And so I took some things off of him and how that works. And so we have five seniors that are on the leadership council, 3 juniors and 3 sophomores, making up 11 guys that make up the leadership council. If you think about that, you have 6 and 5. And why I did the 6 and 5 was if they're voting on stuff, the seniors have to bring one dude with them kind of deal. So they have to flip one of the underclassmen for a vote kind of deal. And how the leadership council works for us is I meet with them every Sunday and we talk about, how the team's feeling, if we've had a loss, how do we overcome that? We do different things, but how I select those guys, and it is me personally selecting those guys. They don't get a vote at all kind of deal. And so as soon as the banquet gets over, okay, if you're a junior, you are now a senior to me. Okay. That's how it works. So even though you're a junior in school academically, you're a senior to me kind of thing is. And I mentioned it early on is our team motto is one way, the right way, community, classroom, and field. And so I start looking at guys in a holistic approach to it are those guys matching what our core values are? Do I not have to worry about them on Saturday and Sunday mornings, getting a phone call of them doing something that they shouldn't have done the night before or something like that? How are they academically? Are they good in the classroom? Are they good leaders within the school? Stuff like that. And then that piece of being really good football players. And so then, just like coaching and forming a team, forming your coaching staff is you can't have everybody all the same because if I put 11 guys on that were all the same, they wouldn't represent who the whole team culture is and stuff like this. And then I start watching. And the kids know this. They're angling right now to how do I get myself onto the leadership council and stuff like this. And so, there's like with with our community service group I went in there and said, okay, who's the president, who's the vice president, who's the director of communications is. The interesting thing is those three guys that they selected to be in charge of that would not have been the three guys that I selected. They are quiet guys. They are guys, but you know what? That's going to stand out to me kind of deal and go, okay, let's see how they do in this process kind of deal. The other thing is like in the weight room, how are these guys engaging these sophomores that are new to our program and stuff like this? How, are they doing this? And then, so throughout the process, throughout the off season, I'm watching these guys. If I see a guy that's going to stand out, I'm going to name them right then at that point kind of deal. I've watched it and all of a sudden, and then it's a slow process. And so by the end of our team camp, which is the end of June, I've named our 11 guys. And it's been a unique deal. Then the cool thing about it is how we do this is really what is a captain kind of deal. High school kids, the biggest thing is going out for that coin flip, right? It's like, I get to walk out there for the coin flip. I'm like, kid, got it. That's not what this is about kind of deal. But they love the coin flip. So here's how we do the coin flip. And this is where I think this is a kind of a cool thing. During our Sunday meetings, we vote on, and we have the uniforms and we have, all that kind of stuff. Part of that is they get to select what we're wearing the week, which drives me nuts because that's a freaking 10, 15-minute conversation. They all debate, okay, what color pants with what jersey and all this stuff. And I'm like, good God, let's just get to this. The other thing they got to do is each class, so the sophomores, the juniors, and the seniors, all have to nominate one guy from the program to be the fourth captain that week. So out of those 11, the juniors and seniors get to select who the three guys out of those 8 are that are the captain that week for them. So they kind of figure that out. And then each one of those grades nominates a guy, and then they vote out of those 3 guys who's going to be the fourth captain every week. So it's a guy that's outside of the leadership council. So the cool thing about it is if you weren't selected to be on the leadership council, you still have an opportunity to be the coin flip guy, right? Yeah. And so then on Thursdays, we do our team walkthroughs are actually at 6:30 in the morning. We do our walkthroughs before school. It allows us to send our guys home after school, stuff like that. Those kids actually, once they select that fourth captain, they actually announce it to the team and the reason why that guy was selected. And the reasoning being is that they fit those 3 parameters, that community, classroom, and field aspect of it kind of deal. And so it gives those kids that aren't selected for that leadership council to be recognized each week to be that kind of thing. And you only get that opportunity once in a season. So hopefully we have 13 different guys if you're playing for a state championship, that it's a different guy each week kind of deal. And, the cool thing is like what I talked about is finding your home. We had one of our guys this year that was on the leadership council. Here was a guy that was a scout team player, barely got on special teams. Okay. The guy was 5'4" and 130 pounds. Okay. Owned the scout team deal. He was a kid that's applying for the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy in West Point kind of deal. He was at everything. He was like, it didn't matter kind of deal. He was not a star football player by any means. But boy, I named him a captain or named him part of that leadership council because let me tell you, he represented probably 60% of our program. He was a guy that bought into, he wasn't going to be a star. Funniest thing was we're up on a team by like 40 and we're trying to get in everybody. Like that's my big thing is I'm not into running up score. We hit 28 points. I'm rolling in dudes so that they can play stuff like this. He's a receiver for me. I look at him and I'm like, whoa, dude, let's get you in at receiver. He looks at me and goes, Coach, I'm good. And I'm like, what? And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm getting in on special teams, get in other guys kind of deal. And I'm like, dude, that is everything that you want in a captain, right? The guy that's going to sacrifice and do that kind of stuff. And so, not letting the team vote, stuff like that is one of those things that taking this holistic approach, is it right? Is it for every team? No, it's different. Again, it's something unique for Summit, the way we do things. But you know what? Again, it allows me to recognize more players in our program that I think that need to be spotlighted. And
Yeah. Shout out Walt.
I
Shout
love
out
Walt.
Walt.
Walt's I am not kidding you. Walt, I'm not supposed to have favorites, but when Walt showed up as an 8th grader and we go into spring ball and we bring our 8th graders up for spring ball, they get to do 7 or 8 practices. Walt showed up, Walt was 4'8" or 4'10", I think, and might have weighed 75 pounds. I have a photo with him when he was and now he's a tower of power. He's 5'4" and about 130 pounds. And I absolutely love that kid. He is everything. And you know what? It makes me realize that, we're going to be in good hands in the future with our young men and stuff like this because of guys like Walt. That young kids get a bad rap. Oh my God. As we're all getting older, like our society, we're all screwed kind of deal. I like to look at Walt and I'm going, dude, Walt's going to run the world and I'm going to be okay when I'm 80 because Walt's going to be taken care of.
Yeah. I like that, Coach. Any final advice on coaching, teaching, leadership for the good of the community before we get off?
Yeah, I think I'll go back to it again is, we all love to win. We love rings and we love accolades and stuff like that. But, when it comes to coaching and stuff like this it is all about the relationships. And it's, building relationships with your players, with your coaches, other fellow coaches. I mean, how long have we known each other? And it's this small little coaching community. As we were talking beforehand is, how many people we all know and are all connected and stuff like this. And so, you know what, I with our society right now and everything is so divisive and everything is, I try to tell everybody is like, it's all about the relationships and, caring about people and stuff like that. I know that all of a sudden, again, we're going back to God, I'm going to get crushed by, my colleagues around the state. They're going, God, that Summit program, they are soft as shit. And how do they keep winning and stuff like this? But, I absolutely love it. And I love what you're doing. I love that you're reaching out and you've got this platform now for coaches that we can all kind of share our visions and stuff like this. We're all different, and that's the thing is, but if we can all kind of take little bits and pieces and stuff like this, it just makes us all better. And so that's a big thing I try to, instill in everything I do is it's about the relationships and caring about people and stuff like that. So I would kind of say that's my biggest part of my life and my values and everything.
Awesome, Coach. Well, shoot, man, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you hopping on and, going
Absolutely.
from weights to the meeting with the nonprofit to now you got your leadership council or your committee below. But I appreciate you fitting me in and,
No,
definitely took a lot from
absolutely.
the
And I
conversation.
appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate you asking. I mean, it was an honor to be asked. I wasn't sure if I would add anything. I might not have added anything, and you're going to cut like for this. But, it was fun. It was fun to come on and kind of talk to you and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Good luck with everything.
Yeah, no doubt. Appreciate that.